James, you're going to start with the interview process, please. So I'm game to get started.
Pete, I know we've only known each other in the last year, but we came together and you intrigued me actually, particularly kind of your background that Carmen alluded to. But I wanted to talk more about or understand more about, which interested me right at the beginning, that you did a TEDx talk. And I didn't actually know what, I've heard of these TED Talks and everything. I didn't know what a TEDx or a TED Talk or a TEDx talk or whatever. So maybe before we go there, you can explain a bit about what is the difference.
Yeah, and it's such a pleasure to be here. So I'm excited to share with you a little bit about my story and look forward to your questions later. And thanks, James. You're going to be a terrific narrator for me and obviously help us communicate my story. But the difference is that the TED is kind of the national program or really global program. It's really focused on global platforms, whereas TEDx is a more local program. It's an officially sanctioned program, and there are TEDx's really all over the world. And I think more and more every year, there's getting to be more of them. The one that I did was actually at a local university here in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States called Georgia State University. And that's where I did my TEDx talk.
Excellent. So, yeah, if people have done a TED Talk, I mean, or some form of TEDx, TED Talk, whatever, just drop it in the chat, just so we have an idea if anyone else done one, because we want to kind of walk through kind of the process on this, because I've not done one. I've done lots of public speaking, but I've never done one of these. And I'm always kind of intrigued, like when I see people doing it, do they just walk on stage? So that's kind of where I'm alluding to go to next. So when you did do one, how did this come about? Did you kind of volunteer, said, I wanted to do one, and you had a burning desire to do it? Or did someone suggest that you should do it? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. And the way this happened is I actually became a part-time instructor, an adjunct professor at Georgia State University. I was actually teaching marketing management at the time. And so I had my own Georgia State email address. And so I think this would have been, so I gave the talk in 2017. So I taught in 2015 and 2016. And I remember sometime in late 2015, early 2016, seeing about the opportunity to hear and listen to TEDx speakers that were going to take place in the spring of 2016. And I saw that and I thought, wow, that would be really exciting. I have always had a desire to do a TEDx for a number of reasons. One is I felt like there's a story I could tell, and I wanted to share part of my brand universe. But secondarily, I thought this would be a great way to show my speaking capability and to actually even hone my speaking skills. And so I kept an eye out, and I think I reached out at the time and I said, I see that you were having your talks in 2016. How can I get involved with 2017? And the person running the program said, listen, be on the lookout in November, December of 2016, we will send an email out. And so I saw that email later in the year, and it was actually on the theme of kind of visualization. It was on the theme of dreams. And so I thought about it and I said, okay, I feel like I do have something around the dreams and visualization that I can give. And so I submitted an application. That would have been in December of 2016. And then in January, yeah, go ahead. It looks like you're going to ask a question.
Yeah, I was going to say, so they give you kind of topics and then you say, yeah, I've got something, a story around that topic. You don't suggest.
Yeah, it's thematic. So for everyone, depending on what TEDx location you're going to, they're going to have a certain theme. And so then you have to figure out whether or not you have something that you can really speak about that will kind of fit underneath that umbrella of the theme. And that's actually what was asked in this question. It said, if you're interested, submit the following application and tell us what you would write about or tell us what you would speak about. And that's what I did.
And do they vary in length?
So the length of these talks is supposed to be around 10 to 14 minutes, around that time frame. They're looking, in my case, there was 8 speakers on the one day, and they wanted us to do 4 in the morning, like say maybe it was around 11 to 1, and then a break, and then from 2 to like 4.
Okay, but this is in front of a live audience.
It was in front of a live audience, correct.
All right. And so when you agreed, yes, I'm going to do it and everything, then did you set an appointment and you turn up and start talking, or how does that work?
And I'm sorry to laugh because it is so comical to hear that. And I know you know a little bit about this, but I submitted my application and then I waited to hear back, and I heard back, I think it was in early January. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, and I was told to show up at a certain time on a certain day in January. And Atlanta is not a very cold place most of the time, but that particular day was very cold. I knew the university's campus because I taught there, but I had no idea where this building was that I was supposed to be at. And I gave myself plenty of time, and I parked in the parking lot that I knew of, only to find out that the location that I had to get to was about a 30-minute walk. And so needless to say, I was a little bit nervous about getting there, and actually showed up 2 minutes before my scheduled interview time.
And frozen.
Frozen as well. And there was a gentleman sitting there waiting to come in after me. And so it turned out that I was one of 20 people that were asked to interview of 50 that had submitted an application.
Wow. So when you first do that, they did that. Do you have to have any kind of prerequisite in the way that you have to have kind of Toastmastering or public speaking skills, or not?
Yeah, the truth is, the answer is no. I mean, you could have a great application, you could go in there, you could blow them away. And when I say blow them away, they were looking for something that was really a hook, that the audience could take away something. Not only the stories were interesting, but there was something that the audience could take away to help themselves. So you had to fit this certain criteria. And I honestly, truthfully, because I had never done one, didn't really know exactly what they were looking for. But I just kind of told my story in the most honest way I could and hoped for the best. Now, if you had been a Toastmaster, if you had spoken before, certainly you were going to have probably an easier time of getting qualified, right? Because they're looking for your ability to interview, they're looking for your ability to speak, they're looking for your ability to articulate clearly what you had in mind. And so I was fortunate enough, of the 20 people that were interviewed, I was one of the 8 that got selected.
So what did they select you on? I mean, kind of what was the hook or the interesting topic or whatever?
Yes, great question. And so I said that I wanted to talk about how to make your dreams a reality through visualization. And so what I shared with them was that I would have this visualization technique where I would look through and I would see where I wanted to go in a certain accomplishment. And then I would picture it in my mind and go through the process of kind of picturing who was there with me when I was at the event, the accomplishment I wanted to achieve, and what we were doing. And all of these things, they helped me solidify my path forward. They gave me the determination to move forward, and encouraged me. And so they liked that because they felt like that not only revealed, and they knew a little bit about my background, right? They knew that I'd been a former naval pilot, and I had some stories to tell about that. They knew about my experiences with the Olympic Games and some stories to talk about that. And so the combination of what I was going to share and this visualization technique was enough for them to invite me to come speak.
So Brand Alive was your current business at the time, or you were still employed by another company?
No, it was my business at the time. I launched Brand Alive in 2009, and this would have been early 2017.
Right. So when you talk about dreams, you talk about dreams as in like, yeah, I have a dream of being a certain type of person, or
Correct. This is not about dreaming while you're asleep, but these are like your goals, your big aspirations, and how to make them become a reality. And that's what I've done. At the time, I was writing the book called Expand, Grow, Thrive. It was published in 2018, as you heard, and I was in the deep, dark throes of it in 2017. And it had been a visualization of mine to have that become a reality. And so I would picture, the thing that I pictured with that was I'd picture myself in front of a line of people who were coming to buy my book, where they were asking me to sign the book. So I would visualize myself signing the book, writing a special note into it for the person who had bought the book and handing it to them. And so you got to know a year forward, when I actually published the book and I sat at a table like this and handed the person the book, it was a very powerful feeling for me because I had been visualizing that for 5 years.
Okay, so we're going to come on to, I guess Carmen's going to show the actual footage of the TEDx talk that you did.
Okay, great.
All right. I mean, she is, I guess.
Yeah, she's going to show about 3 minutes of it,
all right.
the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to show it. I'm going to show it. Give me 1 second.
Okay, it doesn't have to be now. I mean, so Pete, so all in all, I mean, from the time that you registered to the time that you went there, then when you were selected as one of these 20, then you had to go back and they said you're going to be on stage. They showed you, I guess, the stage, and then they told you about stage presence or anything, or kind of any way to conduct yourself.
Yeah, so we got a fair bit of coaching, right? So they told us it had to be around 12 minutes, right? And they told us to write our first draft, which I did. And in my draft, I had a lot of experiences. I told about those experiences, and I told about the people that helped me through it. And when I went through the first review and I read it to them, because that's kind of how you start, I think I ended up with 22 minutes. And so you could see I was 10 minutes longer than I was supposed to be. And on top of that, I wasn't conveying the emotion that I needed to be conveying. So they're like, you need to put more emotion in it and you need to get rid of a lot of excess. And so I went through this honing process. And I told you this earlier, I literally went through probably 20 drafts of my speech, including at probably the 3/4 of the way through, where we met with a communications professor at the university, who then took it and honed it a little bit further. And so it was one of the most rigorous things I've ever done from a writing perspective. And I remember just before, the week before I was supposed to give the speech, I told my wife, I said, listen, would you mind listening to me while I give my speech? And she said, sure. And of course, I read it to her and she goes, that sounds great, Pete. Good luck in memorizing it. And I remember that because I thought, oh my gosh, I have literally got to memorize this speech, this 12 to 15 minute speech. And I went through it in my head every day for the next 7 days, and probably after day 5. So like 2 days before, I'd finally had the whole thing entirely memorized. And of course, with anything like this, you have to say the speech, give the talk as if you were doing it extemporaneously. So I had to give it without showing that I had memorized it, which means I really needed to know it flawlessly. And so I did the best I could and went for it.
And it worked.
It worked. I was also fortunate enough to go last that day, which was kind of a nice tip of the hat to me. And the speech ended up going about 15 minutes and like 16 seconds. So I probably ran over a minute more than I should have, but they didn't seem to complain too much.
So the audience was still there going last.
They were still there going last. I remember my wife was there in the audience with me, and I had twin daughters who were probably 16 at the time. And I think the last thing that my wife said to me was, okay, just don't embarrass me.
I guess they were your cheerleaders anyway. I mean,
they absolutely were. They were there supporting me in a big way, and I certainly had butterflies. I mean, I've spoken a lot, and as I mentioned earlier, I've taught college courses, but you know, this is a big deal. And for me, I wanted to give it my best shot, and I wanted to, you know, one of the things that was so important to me, and this is what I think about anytime I give a talk or anytime I give a workshop, I always think about the audience. And I think about, I have an obligation to you listening today, in fact, that my obligation is to convey knowledge to you that you will benefit from. So it's not so much about how I perform for my sake, it's how I perform for your sake, because for me, this is the reason I'm doing this. And without helping you, I might as well not even be doing it, because I'm wasting your time. So that's what I thought about when I gave the speech that day. And thankfully, it came off okay.
Excellent. So when they actually formulate kind of your story, I mean, I always picture it like, well, I mean, I've seen so many of them, so it's hard to tell, because some people kind of want to put a point across, others kind of want to share knowledge or information with you. And so there's so many different variations of what they are. It's not always easy to know kind of the format of how they do it. But did they say something like, I mean, you have to open with something powerful, then there's kind of the story bit in the middle. So like, if you think of it like, I always think of like a Disney movie. You have a nice starting or something, or even an action movie or something. I mean, you have something that's really powerful at the beginning, then there's kind of the storyline through the middle, keeps you excited, and then you end on a high as well as the way that you started. So did they kind of say something like that?
Yes, they did give me good coaching. I feel like I was a decent writer, but to be able to go from writing to giving a talk like this, really I did appreciate tremendously the coaching they gave. And one of the things that they suggested is start with a question. And so if you listen to it, you'll hear that I do start with a question. And then at the end, and throughout, I try to give stories that really conveyed a lot of my own personal emotion. And I talk about things like when I was learning to fly and being asked to go underwater upside down and being asked to swim out of a difficult situation, or other times when I was helping my clients through a very big challenge. We worked on the Sochi Olympic Games and the challenges that we were facing with that. And at the end of it, I quote Walt Disney, and the quote is, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I absolutely believe that. And so that's what I've implored to the people that have gotten to listen. And I'm really grateful that more than 100,000 people have seen my talk.
Wow.
But I believe it for everyone on this talk today, that if you have a dream, you visualize it, and believe me, I would be happy to go through my technique. But if you can dream it, you can absolutely do it.
Excellent. So we're not actually going to share all of the TED Talk or TEDx Talk. We're just a snippet of it, but it will be available if people want to see the whole thing.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, excellent. So when you're doing this, I mean, you've done lots of public speaking, as you said. What do you think this was the biggest fear of doing them all? Because it was actually recorded as well? Or was it not any different from any of the other ones that you've done?
No, it was definitely the highest bench for me, the loftiest goal. And the reason for it was because, and I think I shared this earlier a little bit, but I had a goal that I wanted to convey something of value, right? So A, I didn't want to embarrass myself, but B, I wanted to give something that people could walk away with and say, yeah, I'm glad I invested the 15 minutes to listen to Pete talk, because now I can take something away from me. Not only hopefully was it entertaining by the stories I told, but I actually you can actually take something away. And so for me, that was a high benchmark, or a high goal to set for myself, because otherwise I could have gotten through it and it would have been fine. But I wanted so much more than that. And then personally, I wanted to reveal another side of my brand universe, because we talk about coming into a brand universe and for people to see different facets of what your brand promises and what your brand essence is. And so for people who would see this, I wanted them to be able to see another persona of me, another aspect of my brand. And so that was revealing as well. So there was a lot of reasons why this was a very challenging event for me, but I try to embrace it like everything else I did. And I figured, okay, I got through the Naval Academy, I got through flight school, I got through business school. I can do this, It didn't mean it wasn't hard, but I was really glad that I went through the effort and did it.
Yeah, well, if you've flown a plane, I guess the adrenaline rush was already there. So what was harder, flying a plane with that adrenaline rush or doing a TEDx talk?
Oh, yeah. I would say certainly flying a plane. In fact, one of the stories I talk about in the TEDx is about my first time ever soloing an airplane. So I'd been with an instructor. I literally only had like 8 hours of flight time. I learned how to take off with him. I learned how to do some basic maneuvering, and I learned how to land the plane. And so he said, after 8 hours, okay, you're ready. Taxi the airplane, get at the end of the runway, and go ahead, take off and fly around to 2 touch and go landings, and then land full stop. And I knew at the end of the runway I had enough information just to be barely legal, and I thought I could kill myself today. And so absolutely that would be a little bit more strenuous. I wasn't going to kill myself during the TEDx, but I certainly could have done that flying an airplane.
Okay. So would you recommend people doing a TEDx?
100%, 100%. There's just so many good reasons to do it. You know, everyone has something, a part of their story that they need to tell. It needs to come out. And I would encourage you with all of the veracity I can to go for it. And maybe use my technique, visualize who's going to be in the audience with you when you give your speech. Visualize what they're going to, or how they're going to react when you've given your speech. Visualize how you're going to feel. And then just go about it. You know, go ahead and find a local chapter near where you live and put your name in. You won't regret it. It's a major investment, but with all things that are like that, right? No risk, no reward. And if you put in the investment, you're going to definitely reap the benefits.
Okay, so now that you've done one, would you do another?
Sure, perhaps. My wife, Emily, said, you know, how many people have to view your TEDx before you get to actually do a regular TED Talk? And I said, I don't know the answer to that question. But if there was something else in me that really needed to come out, I would absolutely go for it.
Actually, there's a question here in the chat. So because of COVID, do they do TED Talks now all online?
Honestly, I do not know, but I would imagine that they would do them online. But gosh, that's a great question. Hopefully we'll be beyond this thing in the next year or so, and we'll be able to do them live. I think it's so valuable to get in front of, you know, live audience and stand on that stage. So, but I don't think we should stop telling our stories during this period. So hopefully they're still doing them, and maybe they're doing them.
It looks like in Italy they're still online. So
okay,
I guess everywhere. So your brand was very important there because you had the opportunity to present yourself. So you just didn't want to turn up and just say, oh, this is kind of the John Smith character. I mean, you wanted to promote your brand and who you were. So that was important as well. So maybe tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So for me as a brand strategist, I had already defined my brand position, my brand promise, my brand architecture. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this was another way, or a way for me to build out my brand universe. So it was good for me because I knew what I stood for. I knew why I did what I did and what I did and how I did it. And I knew the emotions that I was trying to convey and the promises I was trying to convey. So it was very strategic for me to be able to do this. You can do a TEDx without knowing your brand story and your brand positioning, but how much more powerful would it be if you had done that first? And so I was kind of very much grateful that I had done that hard work first and then decided to do the TEDx. And I think for some people who do a TEDx who haven't done the personal branding, they end up doing something, they're very proud of it, but maybe it doesn't have the same level of impact. Or maybe it conveys something about them that they would have chosen to not convey had they done that work. So if we define why we do what we do before we do a TEDx, then we're going to be in a much, much better place. And one of the things that I like to do, and one of the things that is my brand promise, is to encourage others. So the idea that I was teaching people how to use my visualization technique to achieve their dreams fit right in with my personal brand promise.
All right. So doing any sort of event, whether it's online or offline, it's all about also the brand. People want to remember you as the type of person that you want them to perceive you as. I mean, if we can use many examples, and you've got tons of them that you actually use in your programs. So, but I mean, if you look at Steve Jobs, I mean, yeah, there was different types of brand as well, because there's the product brand, there's the personal brand, and there's a company brand. So I mean, there's so many different facets to branding. So when we talk about personal branding, that is different to maybe a product or a service brand as well. So, but it's all blend in, and it should work in harmony with each other. And this is exactly what you do with bringing kind of brands alive.
Yes, absolutely. So I help companies with either their corporate brand, their product brand, or in many cases with entrepreneurs or founders with their personal brand. And truthfully, everyone is a brand, so we should start acting like that. So acting as a brand. So I've just started and looking forward to working with you on this, James, on a collaboration where I help people define their own personal brand. And I'd love to help anyone here on this call today to do that, because it's so important, especially if you are, someone who has a dream that they want to accomplish, whether it is through a nonprofit, it's a personal maybe goal of yours from a hobby, or if you're actually leading a company. It's so important to know what you are about, what your brand stands for, and then meld in what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so we did, or Carmen sent out a poll earlier to identify kind of the people on this call, because it's also important that we understand kind of the audience, so we can bring extra value. But there was a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, coaches, and so on. And yeah, so each and every one of them actually is a brand. I mean, we're all brands, as you say, but
100%.
We want to differentiate ourselves from the competition. And we want to stand out. We want our brand effectively, I mean, without using a pun, to come alive and for people to see it. So how do we get ourselves out there? And then, so branding is very important. And I know that, I mean, I've worked with you for a while now, although not known you so long, but we have worked together, because I see the importance of also branding, which I've kind of neglected a lot. And although I have my logo and stuff, it was still, well, I thought, oh, there's my brand, I have a logo, but it goes much, much deeper than that. And then once you understand the value of it, then you can enhance that in everything that you do, and particularly every talk that you do. So you do online training on this as well.
I do. And I'll start out with one point, which is the first one, which is everything communicates. So if you're communicating something and you don't know that you're communicating it, maybe you're doing something on a social media platform that is not associated with your business, you're communicating your brand in that capacity. Then there's the whole nonverbal communication, right? And then there's a thoughtful communication. And so my goal for individuals is to help teach them through coaching online and through my personal coaching methods via Zoom, is to think first about the fact that everything communicates. So make sure that you're communicating what you want to be communicating. And you'll see in the example here, even with my screen behind me, I'm communicating my brand message. And then the last thing I'd like to communicate is that we have to act with ruthless consistency. That means that we have to say the same thing with the same consistent message, with the same look, again and again and again and again. And if we do something different than that, we're going to convey to our target audience something we're not intending to do, and that's going to confuse them in our message. So it's really important that we understand what our brand stands for, and then communicate, define what we're communicating, and then communicate it consistently and ruthlessly.
Excellent. So I don't want to keep this going for too long, because I don't want to run out of time. And I know Carmen's watching us there with the timekeeping. So, I mean, Pete, that was excellent. And yeah, we're obviously going to share more about how we can contact you, programs that you're doing. And then we'll tell you more about some of the programs that we're actually doing together, because we see the value in this, hence the reason why we were both on here at the same time. So, Carmen.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. I'm looking forward to sharing this little clip of my TEDx, and then flipping the coin, so to speak, and asking you some questions and letting you share your story. Can't wait to do that.
And then we'll open it up to the audience a bit later and let the audience ask direct questions as well, without having to do it in the chat. But back to you, Carmen. And thanks very much, Pete, for that insight.
My pleasure. Through vision, I dreamed of joining the marketing department where the work looked to be much more fun and exciting. There, I would get to travel and work on cool projects. Through visualization, I landed a job on the sponsorship negotiations team, and I got to do deals with the NHL, with NASCAR, and the Atlanta Olympic Games. Through my success with the Atlanta Olympic Games, I got the opportunity not to work on just one Olympics, but 8 different times. I couldn't believe my good fortune. One of my greatest accomplishments was working with a woman named Gabriella on the 2004 Olympics in Sochi, Russia. My job was to create a Coca-Cola pin trading center. Since 1896 in Athens, Pin trading had become the #1 spectator sport at the Olympics. If we were successful, this would be the 15th consecutive Olympics where Coca-Cola had a pin trading center. But from the outset, we were faced with one project-ending challenge after another. 4 months before the Olympics began, our pin manufacturer threatened to quit. And while I was able to resolve the problem, Gabriella grew worried. Picture yourself inside the Coca-Cola Pin Trading Center at the Olympics, I urged. Still, problems kept popping up. Something wasn't right. I decided to make one more trip to Moscow. I remember greeting her that cold December day. Her face was distraught. She blurted, "Pete, our retailer just quit." My heart sank. Oh no, not again. If we couldn't find a replacement, we were toast. We scrambled, and miraculously, by week's end, we had found a backup. 2 months later, I exclaimed, "Gabriella, we're here, sitting in the Coca-Cola Pin Trading Center just as we pictured." She said, "Pete, I believe because you believe." Not only was this one of the greatest compliments I've ever received, but it let me know that my visualization could help others achieve their own dreams. So I ask you, do you have a dream to do something big, something bold, something almost impossible to accomplish? Then I say, picture that dream. Visualize what you will be doing and who you will be doing with when you've accomplished it. The visualization will give you the clarity to know what to do and the determination to go that extra 10% to make it happen. Never let go of that dream. Not only will you accomplish it, but you will become an inspiration for dozens, if not hundreds of others who dare to dream of achieving theirs. In the words of Walt Disney, if you can dream it, you can do it. Thank you.
Wow, excellent. We still got
That was
shirt.
great.
Brings back
Really,
memories.
I love
I thought
your
you'd be wearing the same shirt.
presentation. I've been listening and
It's
listening
just
to try to
coincidental.
find, what was the best part of me to share with everybody. And this was the best, but I highly encourage everybody. I'm gonna give you the link, at the end, and highly encourage you to see, because visualization, people think, don't know it's really work for everything, but it is gonna work for everything, for your job, for your relationship, for everything. So I'm gonna just stop the recording.
Pleasure to switch roles and for me to ask James a few questions. And as James mentioned earlier, he and I have known each other and been working with each other for the last year or so. And I actually had the privilege of being one of his students on a course that he gave on improving my visual visibility impact through my LinkedIn profile. So if you saw my profile 6 months ago and then see it now, you'd see a dramatic change. But hopefully you will connect with me on LinkedIn and you'll get to see the good teaching that I got from James. So without further ado, let me jump into this interview and ask you, James, how did you end up pitching to Kevin Harrington? I mean, talk about, a special occasion like that. That's big time. Where were you? How did it come about?
Yeah, I was in Hollywood at the time. No, not really, of course not.
Was it like Hollywood, Switzerland?
Oh, yeah. But no. Yeah, it was quite strange, actually, because as I said, I mentioned kind of in the breakout rooms that even mentors need mentors, and we can't go alone, and we don't know all the answers to everything. We might be very good at one thing, but not necessarily at the other things. So we need help. So I needed also guidance on aspects of business development that I didn't know. And I was good at selling things from my background, but I didn't know how to be more of an entrepreneur. So I wanted to kind of these entrepreneurial skills. And then I noticed, I joined a program many years ago now And one of the mentors was Kevin Harrington. Or I guess it's a lifetime, so it becomes Kevin Harrington becomes your buddy after a while. So because you get to speak with him a lot of times. So anyway, in the opportunity in those days, it was very kind of one-to-one, and you got a lot of attention, and you kind of socializing with the mentors really quite direct, and it was all face-to-face and everything. So he would come to Switzerland quite often, and yeah, I met him in Zurich, and I was at one of the events, and basically I'd spoke to him previously, and I said that there's so many entrepreneurs here, or would-be entrepreneurs and business owners, but I said that the biggest problem with them is the same as me. We don't have visibility. Nobody knows each other. And it was kind of then, that was the kind of the birth of Visibility Impact at the same time. I know we're going to get to the point in a minute, but I mean, I wanted more visibility, and I thought, well, everybody here needs visibility. And then when you've got visibility, you need to make an impact with it. So kind of that was the birth of the name. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of powerful. And if I could help other people create that visibility, then I'm also doing it for myself, but also for them. So in speaking with Kevin, I was saying, kind of sharing this story. I said, I wanted to create visibility for people. How can I do that? How can I help them stand out from the crowd? And he said, the radio. I said, what are you talking about, the radio? Nobody listens to the radio these days. I said, everything's kind of social media, Facebook and everything else. I said, nobody listens, and podcasts. And I said, yeah, and in Switzerland, what radio would I choose? I mean, I don't speak Swiss German, or terribly, and I don't speak French, and I speak English. I mean, I'm living in a country that, how am I going to get a radio station that speaks English? So anyway, a bit of research, and kind of 6 months later, I found World Radio Switzerland, and everything's in English. So I spoke with the directors then. I said I wanted to do a radio show every week that would feature a business. So we call it the Business Insight. So we ran it as a pilot for kind of 6 months in total. And then this other occasion when I was with Kevin, we were asked, who wants to pitch to Kevin? Put their name in a hat. So I thought, yeah, okay. And I thought, I want to pitch to him because I've never pitched to him. But I don't really want to pitch because I don't really know what I'm going to pitch. But I'm going to do it anyway.
Embarrass yourself.
Exactly, because I wasn't rehearsed or anything. And I really didn't know, would I tell him about this, or wouldn't I? Or am I pitching something else? And but I thought, what the hell? I put my name in the hat, and they wanted 5 people. So there's like 100 names in a hat. And there was like, there was 1,000 people in the auditorium. But I mean, this was a smaller group of, I don't know, 50 or so people, and Kevin there wanting to give feedback on the way that people pitched. So anyway, the first one went, I just had that gut feeling that I'm going to be number 5. And anyway,
how did you know you were even going to get picked? I mean, that was luck of the draw by itself, right?
do you know, like you said, to talk about dreams, I kind of had that gut feeling. I believe your gut is your 6th sense, right? But that's another story. Right. But I just had that feeling that I'm going to be picked. I just knew I was going to be picked, and I'd be number 5. So anyway, number 1 came and went. I thought that was terrible. Number 2 came and went. That wasn't much better. And he gave feedback as well. Number 3 came, 4 came, and then number 5 put the name in the hat and said, James Moffitt. I thought, oh shit, it's me. Right, so I thought,
my gosh, you found out right then. Wow.
So I thought, no, I have to do something. And I kind of watched how they did it. And I thought, no, I'm going to do it different. I was a believer in kind of storytelling, and storytelling I do with the kids, but I kind of take it one step further into interactive storytelling. I wanted it to be something that he would interact back with. So I started, Kevin, remember 6 months ago, you told me about the radio. And he said, well, because he speaks to thousands of people, he probably didn't even remember talking to me. But anyway, he said yes. So I thought, well, that's a bonus. So anyway, so anyway, he said yes. And I said, and then I told him about basically World Radio Switzerland, what I did, and blah, blah, blah. And I was featuring every week. There was a different featured business. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go into all the details about it, but anyway, he was kind of blown away, nearly fell off his chair. and was so excited. He said, "When did you start?" And I said, "I did." I said, "I started like, we were up to our 15th, it was 15th at the time,
Wow.
a weekly business, featured business." And he said, he was so blown away by it. He said, "Right, I've got to give you a video. I've got to give you a testimonial." I said, "Oh, okay then." He never mentioned that before. And he said, "Right, actually, you're going to get a video testimonial, right?" So I said, "Well, okay then." I did wait some time to get it because he's a busy guy, but I got the video testimonial, and you can see it. You'll see what he says rather than me trying to regurgitate what he said. But yeah, he was
But before you get to that, James, tell us. I mean, like you were saying, how you. I mean, I'm thinking if I'm him and I'm hearing you tell me that I recommended to you 6 months ago to do something,
Mhm.
to hear that you had done it. I mean, he must have felt really good about that. Like, this guy listened to me. I know that when I give mentoring, I'm so happy to hear when people actually take my recommendation. And if they don't, then I feel like we both lost. But in your case, you did do it. But what was your talk about? Was it about that, or was there something else that you actually spoke about?
No, it was about that because I wanted to kind of give back to him what he had kind of seeded those ideas with me kind of 6 months earlier. And I thought if I was to tell him I'd done something like that, but in a way that it was kind of storytelling, then I wasn't really pitching anything. I was just telling them basically the story. So it was a pitch in a way it resonated with him. And yeah, and because he had seeded that idea, and exactly what you said, when someone actually does something that was your kind of thoughts and idea and go off and do that, then why would I question not to do it if he's a proven serial entrepreneur and I just sat back and didn't do it? Then if I pitched something else and then he said, "Ah, weren't you the guy that I talked about 6 months ago about the radio? Did you do that?" I said, "No, I couldn't be bothered. I couldn't find one." So it resonated so much with him that he was kind of blown away by the fact that exactly what you said, someone has done something that you suggested to do and made it a success as well.
Wow. So you did that so well that not only was he so, I guess, impressed, he volunteered to do basically a video recommendation or testimonial on your behalf. Is that
Yeah,
right?
he did, but he does them very, very professionally. And yeah, I mean, you'll see it. You've probably seen it a dozen times anyway. But I mean, when the audience
No,
have a
I'm
look
looking
at it,
forward to seeing it. I think
yeah,
it's going to be cool to hear him talk about you. That's great.
I think actually Carmen's got it. I think she's going to show it.
Oh,
But
that'll be excellent.
I mean, that
But
was kind of my first experience of, oh, not my first, but my first experience with my mentor, actually giving something back.
yeah, that must have really connected with him, and well, I'm certain it did in a powerful way. But had you done any public speaking before you raised your hand and elected to do this pitch?
I had many. I hated
Tell
them.
tell us about those. And did you have any fear when you
Oh
first
yeah,
started, and do you still have
lots.
fear when you do it now?
Yeah, still. Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to. It's kind of a boyhood dream as well that I always wanted to be on stage and do something. I always thought myself as like, because my name's James, I thought I was James Bond, you see. So uh, I
That
was called
works well.
the kids call me James Blonde. It's not really grey hair. I say it's blonde, so they call me James Blonde. But anyway, I always wanted to do something in front of an audience, but I never knew what. I auditioned as a kid, actually, which I probably never told you, to be on lots of TV series as a kid.
Oh my gosh,
But
you're brave.
we could digress a lot on that, but forgetting about that, I did have the chance of doing public speaking, and I hated it. I wanted to do it. I really had the desire for doing it, and I saw other people doing it, but it started off more judging. I was more of a judge than a speaker, and until I could see people speaking, and I thought, how can I judge on them if I don't do it myself? So then I thought, I was then asked, because I critiqued them quite hard when I was judging, and I thought, yeah, when someone had turned around to me and said, "It's not so easy on the stage. Why don't you give it a go?" And I thought, shit. Now, then someone said,
Uh-oh.
"Yeah, why don't you do it?" Big mouth, and I thought, "Oh, okay then." So I thought, "Okay, I'll do one." So once I did my first one, then the next, the rest. Although I mean, I always fear them. I think it is natural to kind of fear it or have those inhibitions and whatever. But once you've done it, the buzz that you get after the first 6 seconds or so, and you're actually on the stage, is completely different to waiting backstage for your turn. So I did some quite bizarre ones as well, which, yeah, I tried to
Can you
forget.
share any that the audience might enjoy hearing about?
Yeah, I did one in Zurich, and I hope there's not anyone on the call that remembers this one. Right? This one was, I can't remember the title. It was something like diversity or something. It had to be something completely different. So originally coming from Scotland, I was born in Edinburgh. So I still have the Scottish roots and everything. And I have my kilt and all the stuff. So I thought diversity, that'd be a good one to dress up as a Scotsman, right? Although I don't have a Scottish accent anymore.
And where were you at the time?
This was an event in Zurich.
So
Right.
you're dressed up as a Scotsman in Zurich. Okay.
So I was dressed up with my kilt on and that tradition, no underpants and stuff, right? So
Oh my gosh.
I had my little whiskey flask.
I've only heard
well.
about that.
Oh yeah, I had a little flask of whiskey and in backstage, having a quick drink, and get my Dutch courage and everything. Right? So then I thought, and I took forever to prepare because putting the kilt on and all the bits and pieces, it takes forever. So luckily I wasn't the
I
first,
wouldn't know.
right? And I missed all of those because the others are sitting in the auditorium watching, and I'm still getting ready. And they say, "What are you doing?" And I wanted to be a surprise to everyone. So then I also, being diversity, I wanted to be diverse. So I painted half my face with the blue flag. I know people are going to put. I'm just seeing if anyone's commenting there. Anyway, half my face with the Scottish flags, the blue and the white, like Braveheart, right? Right. So you can imagine. So then it said, right, our next speaker is James Moffat, right? And then I'm jumping on the stage, wielding because you have a little dagger in your socks, right? I couldn't bring a sword, I'd probably be arrested, but at least I had to have my dagger. And then I'm on the stage, shouting, freedom, right? And then people, what's going on here? Who's this crazy guy in a Scottish kilt with his face painted, right? So I shouted freedom, and I said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about Brexit," right? And I wanted to try and add some humor into the story I was going to tell. But I had a story in mind, and I prepared the story for weeks, actually, knowing I was going to do it. And to me, I thought it was very, very clever because I wanted to tell my story, and everybody's got a story to tell. Now, it's either a turning point in your life, a pivot point, or an emotional change, or whatever it may be. There's always at some point a story. And I had a story. Well, probably many stories, but I picked this one in particular. And I wanted to do it in a way that it'd be unique as well. So I looked at 3 well-known songs. I can't even remember what they are now. So I wasn't going to talk about this, but so you've got me.
Maybe share just a little bit of one song.
Okay, so yeah, so the 3 songs were, and I changed the lyrics. So I said I can't sing, but bear with me here, and if you can join in, that will help me out. So it was my story, but so I changed the lyrics to American Pie. So you know how it starts, right? So I'll just give it. I'm not going to sing it, right? I'll just speak it, right? My
Oh, please go ahead.
No, my singing is terrible. Right? So anyway, so I said, long, long time ago, I can still remember how my job used to make me smile. And if I had another chance, I would make others dance, and maybe they'd be happy for a while. But 2016 made me shiver. My wife expecting 2 more kids to deliver. Then the bad news came on my doorstep, and I couldn't take one more step. And then it went on a few verses, and then I
That's
changed.
amazing.
But it was basically the time that this was we already had a 3-year-old, and my wife was giving birth to twins, and it really changed our complete lives. I lost my job, and I was pretty desperate at the time, and so I wanted to kind of use this as an opportunity to tell my story, but in a different way to how people tell stories. And then I ended up actually, I can't remember the middle song. I'd have to dig it out. It's quite a few years ago now. And then the last one was Imagine by John Lennon. So I changed all the lyrics to that as well. And I thought it was the best ever. I thought that if I was the judge and put myself back in the judging seat, I would have given myself like, you're the winner.
Oh, it was very creative. I'll tip my hat to you, and very brave. Brave enough to get out there with a kilt on, but then start to sing and change the lyrics and have to remember them all. That is impressive. So would you do it again?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'd probably do something even more wacky than that. I think but honestly, once you get the taste of it, I mean, fear was kind of the biggest inhibitor. And I'm not going to do, oh no, that's not for me. That's for other people. When I used to see them on stage, it's hard enough being a judge, right? Because you had to try and judge them in a critical way that actually made sense, right? So that was a skill itself. I wasn't really watching them. I was more taking notes on how I could critique them. But then now the other way around, yeah, and it's all about body presence and everything else. And it's really not easy. But the biggest thing was the fear. So I wrote a whole article about fear and how to address fear. I mean, people say, can you get over fear? Well, certain things, yes, and other things, you never, but you kind of accept it. You know, I'm always going to have it, but I can accept it, and I know how to kind of deal with it, but I'll always have it, right? So, but anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you say you're not afraid, you're kidding yourself. And the person who is afraid but chooses to go ahead anyway is the one who's going to be successful, because they're going to measure, what they do. And it sounds like you did a good job with that. So you're now, obviously you do this. You speak, you judge. How do you help others in this area? How do you help them, have this visibility impact that you talk about?
So everything's about business growth. Everybody needs to grow a business. I mean, whether you're a solopreneur, startup, SME, or whatever, everybody needs to grow their business. And we don't know everything about everything. We're normally very good at our niche thing, but we need help. So it's about helping them grow their business using online tools. I mean, I'm a LinkedIn guru. So I do a LinkedIn training course, but also Perfecting Your Pitch. We do a monthly event on that. We do a featured business that is also a weekly event. So we feature businesses to give them visibility. So we took the kind of the radio idea and we put that online exactly like this. So we give someone a spotlight for an hour, all about them and their business, but we take it a step back in the way it's not just about the business, it's about the person behind the business. So who is the person? So we do that on a weekly basis. So we've done our 27th was last Friday. So anyone's free to come and join and also be kind of a guest speaker. But what we do now with the interactive storytelling, so I had my own programs on that because I did that with the children, and interactive bedtime storytelling. And then we created books and magical adventures with the kids. And I learned so much from the kids that would be applicable to business owners, which is quite ironic. But you do. And then how could you make an interactive? So if you're pitching your business or you're doing a keynote or a TED talk or whatever it is, or your sales pitch, how do you make it interactive that you really engage in the audience? Because once you're engaging, then they're coming along that journey with you. So then I put a program together on that. So it's about teaching people the art of interactive storytelling. And or for business. And then I use a methodology called my 3 C's. Now, as we mentioned, Kevin Harrington is my mentor, right? So he's got in here his. So he calls his 3 T's, P's, and C's. And I never liked his because having kids, I'm always saying, stop teasing. And then he's saying, tease, please, and seize. So you've got to tease the audience, please the audience, and seize the audience. And I said, no, it doesn't work for me. I want my 3 C's, right? So you've got to connect with the right audience, whatever that may be. You've got to communicate something of immense value. Everything is about value, value, value. Bring immense value, keeping them on that journey. And then you've got to convert to your desired outcome for that particular thing in mind. And yeah, so if you have a desired outcome in mind, working back to get the 3 C's. So this is something that Pete, as you know, working with you, we've blended this together because a brand is one thing, but how do you articulate that brand and promote that brand is another. So, and then grow that brand. So that's why we've come together for this, actually, because we can see the value.
They really do go hand in hand. Once you know your brand story, then you can communicate your story, and having your brand architecture first is essential to that. How are we doing on time, Carmen? Are we able to share the video and then ask some questions?
Yeah, I think perfect now if I just share the video. And
that was really interesting, James. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I can't even think about
just have to mute
painting
because I'll keep talking.
All right, we're going to hear this really good.
Thanks. Well, so here we go. Okay, thanks.
Okay, let me share now the testimonial. 1 second.
Yeah, remember, this isn't the pitch. This is the testimonial.
You're going to see soon enough. It's good.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kevin Harrington, an original shark from the hit TV show Shark Tank. I also am the inventor of the infomercial, a pioneer of the As Seen on TV brand, as well as a serial entrepreneur, business leader, and mentor. And I want to talk about my friend James Moffitt, because he is the founder of Visibility Impact. And he and I have been working together for a number of years. And I know he's very powerful as he helps business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs take that leap of faith on their progress and their path to greatness. Now, offering these folks advice in the nurturing and growing and fostering of their visibility and their awareness is very important. And also, he has a number of tailor-made business modules and services that he provides to these business owners and entrepreneurs. And as I mentioned, I've been working with James, and I'm a mentor to James, and I see him successfully launching many things inside of his business, one of which is called the Business Insight Weekly Radio Show on World Radio Switzerland, WRS. Now, this is now featuring over 15 different business owners, and it broadcasts their message all across Switzerland. So I really admire James for his never give up mentality and his fighting mentality, and I endorse him for the success that he is having, not just with the radio, but all the other inspiring things that he does, because he's helping entrepreneurs gain more visibility. He's helping them grow their business. So I want you to check out James and all the services he provides at visibilityimpact.com. And James, keep up the good work. 2 thumbs up to you. And many of the entrepreneurs that are listening right now need to check out visibilityimpact.com. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, 2 thumbs up there.
Bravo. Well